The World Cup says it belongs to the world. Then it tells part of the world to stay home. That is the contradiction. That is the click. And that is why this is much more than a story about visas. Because the problem is not one simple no-fly list story. It is a stack of barriers. Some countries are on US travel ban lists. Some supporters can still apply, but only under stricter rules. Some, like fans from Ivory Coast, can be hit with visa bonds of $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000. The teams are expected to be exempt. The ordinary supporters are not. That is the real story. Not just who gets to play in the World Cup, who gets to physically belong to it. A World Cup is not just a bracket and a rights package. It is a gathering, a month where cities get louder, stranger, and more alive because supporters from across the planet drag their songs, colors, nerves, and rituals into the same streets. That is why it feels bigger than club football. That is why it matters differently. The emotional scale comes from the people, which means this story is not some bureaucratic side note. If the teams arrive but large parts of their support cannot, the tournament still happens, but something essential is missing. The event becomes less like a global celebration and more like a premium spectacle with global branding. That is not a small shift. That is a change in what the World Cup actually is. One reason this story works so well is that it is not theoretical. There is a venue. There are nations. There are numbers. Philadelphia's Lincoln Financial Field will host Iraq against France in the group stage. That should be a beautiful sentence on its own. Iraq are back at the World Cup after 40 years. A national football absence ends. A city gets one of the tournament's most emotionally charged games. But this is where the idea turns. According to local reporting, Iraq is one of 4 nations passing through Philadelphia, whose supporters face significant barriers to getting there. The others are Haiti, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. That means one host city already reveals the broader tension in miniature. The official line is that the tournament welcomes the world. The practical reality is that for some nations, the welcome ends at the team delegation. This is the part the story has to explain cleanly. Because the problem is not one single rule, it is several rules piling on top of each other. For the teams, the route is relatively protected. Players, coaches, staff, and immediate family are still expected to be allowed to travel. That is why the match can still go ahead. The anthem still plays. The tournament image still looks normal on television. For supporters, it is much harsher. Some nationalities are on travel ban lists, which can make fan entry extremely difficult or effectively impossible. Others face partial restrictions. And in the case of Ivory Coast, even a fan who is otherwise eligible for a tourist visa may still be asked to post a visa bond of $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000. That bond does not guarantee a visa. That is the key point. It is simply another barrier, another payment, another layer of risk. So the system ends up drawing a brutal line. The nation can enter as a squad. The people who would normally follow that nation into the stands may not. That is not global football at full strength. That is a curated version of global football. Even if the paperwork problem disappeared tomorrow, the money problem would still be enough to twist the tournament's meaning. That is another reason this story lands so hard. For Iraq against France, reported ticket listings put upper-level seats at $667, while some lower-level seats shot into the tens of thousands. That is not just expensive. It is alienating. It tells ordinary supporters that even after qualification, even after planning, even after hope, the event may still not be built for them. So the barriers multiply. Travel bans, visa bonds, ticket prices. And what gets lost is not only attendance. It is the basic feeling that the World Cup is shared. Yes, diaspora communities can help fill that gap. Yes, local supporters will still create atmosphere. But that is not the same as a fan flying in from Baghdad, Abidjan, Port-au-Prince, or Accra for the match that defines a generation. Those moments are part of the point. Without them, the event is thinner. Iraq returning after 40 years should be one of the tournament's purest football stories. It should feel like history reopening, a country re-entering the sport's grandest stage with its people behind it. Instead, even in the middle of joy, the story is shadowed by distance. Supporters interviewed in Philadelphia spoke about how hard it would be for relatives and friends back home to make the trip, even if they somehow had the money for it. That turns celebration into separation. The players go, the people watch from afar. The reunion stays incomplete. And once that happens, the World Cup starts to feel less like a global family reunion and more like a premium show with selective entry. And then there is Iran, which gives the story an even darker edge. Iranian supporters were already banned from entering the United States under the earlier travel ban wave. Then, after the US-Israeli bombardment of Iran and the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the president of Iran's Football Federation publicly said he did not know whether the national team could still be expected to play World Cup matches in the United States. That had not become an official withdrawal, but the doubt alone matters, because it shows how quickly this story can escalate. It starts with supporters being unable to travel. Then it moves toward a bigger question. What happens when a qualified nation no longer feels sure it even wants to participate on US soil? That is when the problem stops being just a fan access problem and starts becoming a legitimacy problem for the tournament itself. What makes the whole story stronger is that the emotional truth is obvious to anyone who actually loves the sport. The World Cup is supposed to bring people together. That is what makes the World Cup the World Cup. Exactly. That is the entire case. This is not politics being forced onto football from the outside. This is football explaining itself. A World Cup without the people who carry their nations into the streets, onto the trains, and into the stands is still a tournament, but it is not fully the same event. Take away too many of those people, and you do not just lose color, you lose meaning. So what is the story here, really? Not just that some supporters face bans, not just that prices are ridiculous, not just that one city has a contradiction on its hands. The real story is that a tournament built on global belonging is discovering how unequal belonging can look in practice. The players can get there, the sponsors can get there, the broadcasters can get there, but some of the very people who make the World Cup feel like the World Cup are being told, in one form or another, that this moment is not fully for them. And that leaves football with a question it cannot dodge forever. If the World Cup belongs to the world, what exactly are we hosting when part of the world cannot get in?